My name is Agnes Albright, and I am 68 years old. Last night, my own son struck me until I bled over a bowl of unsalted soup. While I was left on the cold kitchen floor wiping my own blood from the Italian marble with an old rag, he calmly went to his room, closed the heavy oak door, and fell asleep as if nothing had happened. As if striking his own mother were the most normal thing in the world. This morning, I woke up with a body that screams in protest, deep, ugly bruises blooming like poisoned flowers on my arms, and a cut on my lip that still burns when I talk. But what hurts the most isn't the physical pain. It's the profound, chilling humiliation. It's knowing that my own son, the one I raised with so much love, the one I gave everything to, sees me as his personal servant. It's knowing that my only purpose in this world is to serve him and keep quiet. I got up at 5 inches the morning, just like every other day. Julian was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table in his impeccable gray Armani suit, scrolling on his phone. He didn't even look at me when I entered. He just said, without looking up, "Breakfast. Hurry up, I have an important meeting." It was as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't screamed at me the night before, calling me worthless, useless, and saying that if I weren't his mother, he would have thrown me out onto the street. I prepared his scrambled eggs exactly the way he likes them, with 3 spoonfuls of shredded Gruyere, 2 slices of toasted sourdough, and black coffee with no sugar. Everything had to be perfect, measured to the last detail, because if anything is even slightly off, he explodes. And when Julian explodes, I am the one who pays the consequences. While he was eating, the sound of a key turning in the front door lock echoed through the penthouse. It was a young, elegant woman named Chloe, his wife, who always greets me with a painfully fake smile and treats me as if I'm invisible. She came in wearing a light green dress and high heels, kissed Julian on the cheek, and sat at the table as if she owned the place. "Good morning, Mrs. Albright," she said to me in that sweet, syrupy voice she only uses when Julian is around. "How are you this morning?" I wanted to tell her that I woke up bruised by her husband, that I had bruises all over my back, that I couldn't take it anymore. But instead I smiled and said, "I'm fine, thank you. Are you going to have some breakfast, Chloe?" Julian shot me a warning look. His eyes were clearly saying, "One wrong word, and tonight will be worse." Then he added with that fake, charming smile he only uses when he has an audience, "Look, Mom, I bought you this new makeup. It's perfect for covering those little scrapes you got when you tripped last night." Yes, little scrapes. That's what he calls what he did to me, as if it were an accident. As if I had tripped and fallen on his fist all by myself. I took the makeup without saying anything. It was an expensive foundation, the kind that costs more than $80. He probably bought it with my retirement money, because he manages my entire bank account. He says it's for my own good, that at my age, I can't handle money on my own anymore. The truth is, I haven't seen a single penny of my own $3,500 a month pension in 2 years. Chloe was looking at him with those shining eyes of admiration. "You're so thoughtful, honey, always taking care of your mom." If only she knew. If only she knew that her perfect husband, that successful investment banker who handles million-dollar accounts, comes home every night to take out his frustration on me. After breakfast, Julian put on his red tie, grabbed his briefcase, and whispered in my ear while Chloe was touching up her makeup, "Remember what we talked about last night. If you ever open your mouth, if you tell anyone what happens here, you're going to regret it. No one will believe you. You're just a crazy old woman living off her son's charity." His words chilled me to the bone. They left together, holding hands like the perfect couple they pretend to be. I watched them from the window as they got into Julian's new car, a black Bentley that cost more than $400,000. My money, all of it bought with my money. When the house fell silent, I sat in the kitchen and started to cry. Not tears of sadness, but of rage, of helplessness. Because I know I have to do something, but I don't know what. I know I can't keep living like this, but I also don't know how to get out of this nightmare. I sat in that silent kitchen for hours, watching the sunlight slowly make its way across the floor tiles. This Chicago penthouse used to be my sanctuary. I bought it 30 years ago with the money I saved working as a senior archivist at the University of Chicago, handling the private files of some of the city's most powerful families. 40 years of my life dedicated to that job, getting up at 5 inches the morning, always on time, organizing the lives of others. I never imagined I'd end up a prisoner in my own home. It all started 3 years ago, when Julian divorced his first wife. He showed up at my door one night with a suitcase in his hand, and that look of a lost boy that always melted my heart. "Mom, I need to stay here for a while, just until I sort out my financial situation." He told me the divorce had left him bankrupt, that he had lost his house, that he had nowhere to live. I, like the foolish mother I've always been, opened my door and my heart. "Of course, son, this is your home too." How naive. I didn't know I was inviting the devil to live with me. The first few months were normal. Julian would get up early, go to work, come back at night, and we'd eat dinner together. But little by little, things started to change. First, it was small comments. "Mom, this food is too salty. Mom, why don't you clean the bathroom better?" Then he started getting into my finances. "Mom, at your age you shouldn't be handling so much cash. Let me help you with your accounts." And I, like the idiot I am, gave him access to my bank account. In 6 months, Julian had completely taken over my money. My monthly pension went directly to his account. He gave me $20 a week for personal expenses. When I asked him about the rest of the money, he would say, "Mom, I'm investing your savings to help them grow. Trust me." Then Chloe came along, a woman 25 years younger than him with a perfect smile and a ruthless ambition you could spot from a mile away. 6 months later, they got married in a ceremony that cost over $100,000. My money, of course. Since Chloe came into our lives, everything got worse. Julian started treating me like the housemaid. "Mom, make dinner for Chloe and me. Something elegant. Mom, clean the guest bathroom." And I always obeyed. I obeyed because I was afraid he'd get angry. Afraid he'd follow through on his threat to kick me out of my own house. Because even though the house is legally mine, Julian convinced me to put his name on the deed too, for security. He said, "Mom, just in case something happens to you." The violence started a year ago. Accidental pushes, then pinches. Then it escalated to slaps, punches to my back. But last night was different. Last night, he crossed a line I never thought he would cross. I had prepared vegetable soup for dinner. He came home tired, sat at the table, took the first spoonful, and his face changed. "What the hell is this?" he yelled, spitting the soup back into the bowl. "It has no salt. It's as bland as water." I immediately apologized. "I'm sorry, son, I forgot the salt." But it was too late. He stood up, grabbed the bowl, and threw it in my face. The hot liquid burned my cheek. Pieces of porcelain cut my lip. "You're useless," he screamed, grabbing my arm. 40 years working as an archivist, and you can't even make a decent soup. You're pathetic." He shoved me against the kitchen wall. My head hit the tile. He slapped me, then another one, and another one. "Chloe is bringing her friends over for lunch tomorrow," he told me while I covered my face. "I want you to prepare something special, and you'd better make sure it's perfect, because if you make me look bad, I swear to God I'll kick you out of this house." Then he calmed down. He bent down, helped me up, and wiped the blood from my lip. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said in a soft voice. "I just get so frustrated. It's all for your own good, so you'll learn." And he went to sleep peacefully. As I cleaned, I started to remember. Julian wasn't always like this. When he was a boy, he was sweet. His father left us when he was 8, and from then on, it was just him and me. I worked double shifts for years to give him everything. I put him in the best private school. I bought him designer clothes. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I spoiled him so much that he never learned the value of respect. At dawn, I heard his footsteps. He came into the kitchen, dressed in his black suit, checking his phone. He just sat and waited. I prepared his scrambled eggs, his black coffee, his 2 slices of toasted bread, all in absolute silence. At 7:30, Chloe arrived, wearing a tight yellow dress. "Good morning, Mrs. Albright," she said with that plastic smile. "How are you feeling today?" Fine, thank you. I lied as always. As I was serving her coffee, I noticed her observing me out of the corner of her eye. Her eyes stopped on my swollen lip, on the bruise peeking out from the collar of my blouse. For a moment, I thought she might say something, but instead, she simply looked away and went back to her phone. Julian finished his breakfast and looked at me intently. Remember what I told you last night, Mom? Chloe is bringing 3 of her friends over for lunch. I want you to prepare something special. Seafood, pasta, Caesar salad, desserts, and buy some white wine. The good stuff. He gave me 3 $20 bills. $60. And one more thing, he added, leaning in to whisper. Put on that makeup I bought you. Cover those marks well. If any of her friends ask anything strange, you're going to regret it. Do you understand me? I nodded, feeling my hands tremble. He smiled, kissed my forehead like the perfect sun, and they left. As soon as the door closed, I collapsed into a kitchen chair. $60 for an elaborate lunch. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and hardly recognized myself. My lip was swollen and purple. I opened the expensive makeup and started applying it carefully, covering every mark, every piece of evidence. I went out to do the shopping. At the supermarket, I tried to stretch those $60. Frozen shrimp instead of fresh, the cheapest wine. As I waited in line to pay, an older woman approached me. It was Mrs. Petrov, my next-door neighbor, a widow in her 72nd who has always been kind. "Hello, Agnes," she said with a warm smile. "How are you doing, dear? I haven't seen you in the yard lately." "Hello, Mrs. Petrov," I said. "I'm fine, thanks. Just busy." She looked at me intently, and I noticed her eyes linger on my lip, despite the makeup. "Did you hurt your mouth?" she asked with genuine concern. My heart started to race. "No, it's nothing," I lied. "I just bumped into the closet door last night. You know how clumsy I am." Mrs. Petrov frowned but didn't push it. "Well, if you ever need anything, you know where I live. I'm always home in the afternoons." Her words went straight to my heart. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything, but Julian's voice echoed in my head. "No one will believe you. You're just a crazy old woman." I went back inside and started cooking like a mad woman. I had to have everything ready by noon. I cleaned the house from top to bottom, set the table with the good china, and arranged flowers. At 11:30, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Albright?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, this is she. This is Mr. Hines from your son Julian's company, Blackwood Capital. We need to speak with you urgently about some discrepancies in the accounts. Could you come to the office this afternoon?" My heart stopped. "Discrepancies? I don't understand. I'd rather not discuss this over the phone, Mrs. Albright. Can you come at 3 this afternoon? It's very important." I hung up, my hands trembling. What could Julian have done? A bad feeling settled in my stomach, but I didn't have time to think. Chloe and her friends were arriving. The doorbell rang at exactly 12. I took a deep breath, touched up my makeup, and went to open the door. There was Chloe with her 3 friends, all dressed as if they were going to a fashion show. "Hello, Mrs. Albright," Chloe said. "Let me introduce you to my friends. This is Beatrice, this is Brenda, and this is Catherine Price, from our legal department." My heart nearly stopped. I looked at her closely. It couldn't be. It was her, Beatrice, my younger sister, whom I hadn't seen in more than 2 years since a bitter family argument. Beatrice looked at me with the same shock. But we both played it cool. She has always been smarter than me, more cunning. She immediately understood that something strange was going on, especially when she saw my made-up face and my nervous demeanor. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Albright," she said to me formally, as if she didn't know me. "Your daughter-in-law has told us so much about you." I invited them into the dining room. I served lunch, trying to keep my hands steady. The women ate and talked. I went back and forth from the kitchen, serving more wine, clearing plates. But Beatrice's eyes never left me. I knew that look. "The food is delicious, Mrs. Albright." Beatrice, the friend, commented. "How lucky Julian is," Brenda added. Chloe smiled. "It's true. Mrs. Albright always takes care of everything. It's like having a housekeeper, but better, because she does it with love." Her words stung me like daggers. A housekeeper. Beatrice, my sister, cleared her throat. "And what did you do before, Mrs. Albright? Were you always a homemaker?" I paused, feeling a little pride. "I worked for 40 years as a senior archivist at the University of Chicago. I retired 3 years ago." Beatrice's eyes lit up. "How interesting," she exclaimed. "I know that archive. They have a very good reputation. You must have handled a lot of important documents." "I did," I said. "I met judges, prosecutors. I even helped organize the files for the Blackwood Trust case." Chloe looked uncomfortable. She quickly changed the subject. "Well, but now Mrs. Albright is retired. Julian takes care of everything, her finances, her needs. He's such a responsible son." Beatrice looked at me intently when Chloe said that. When I went to the kitchen for the dessert, she followed me. "Do you need any help?" she asked. But she was really looking for a moment to talk to me alone. "No thanks. Everything's under control," I replied, avoiding her gaze. "Agnes," she said in a low voice, using my real name. "Are you okay? You seem different." For a moment, all my defenses came down. I wanted to hug her, tell her everything. But at that moment, I heard Julian's keys in the front door. He had come home from work earlier than usual. "Everything's fine, Beatrice," I said quickly. "I'm just a little tired." Julian came into the dining room with that perfect smile. He greeted the women elegantly, kissed Chloe, and looked at me with approval. The lunch had gone well. "She's the best mother in the world," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder. I tensed up automatically. He felt my reaction and squeezed, his fingers digging into my shoulder. Always sacrificing herself for the family. The women started saying their goodbyes. Beatrice was the last to leave. Before she went out the door, she took my hand. "It was a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Albright," she said loudly. But then she whispered, "I'll be in touch." When they were all gone, Julian closed the door, and his expression changed. "You did well," he said coldly. "For once, you didn't embarrass me." While I was cleaning, he reminded me, "By the way, the technician is coming tomorrow to check your computer. You've been browsing some strange websites." My blood ran cold. The only strange things I had looked up were websites about domestic abuse, shelters for battered women, and helplines. He knew. Just then, my phone rang. It was Mr. Hines again. "Mrs. Albright, can you come in at 3 this afternoon? It's urgent." I looked at the clock. It was 2:15. Julian was in his room. It was my chance. "Yes," I said in a low voice. "I'll be there." I grabbed my keys, my purse, and quietly left the house. The office building where Julian worked was all glass and steel. I went up to the 30th floor. Mr. Hines greeted me. "Mrs. Albright, thank you for coming. I need to ask you some questions about your bank account." He opened a folder. "We have discovered that your son Julian has been using company funds to make transfers to your personal bank account, transfers that are then immediately withdrawn." I felt as if I had been hit. That can't be true. I'm afraid it is. In the last 6 months, he has diverted more than $150,000 of corporate funds. The money is transferred to the account he shares with you. My world collapsed. My son was a thief, and he was using me as an accomplice. "But I didn't know anything," I said desperately. "He manages my entire bank account." "We know," Mr. Hines said gently. "That's why I called you. We need you to file a formal complaint for the misuse of your bank account. It's the only way to clear your name." I left that office in a state of total shock. When I finally got home, it was 6. Julian was in the living room. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice low and threatening. For the first time in years, I looked him directly in the eyes. "I was at your office." His expression changed. "What did you say?" "I was at your office, Julian. I spoke with Mr. Hines. I know what you've been doing." He got up from the couch slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. I think you're confused." $150,000, I said, my voice firm. $150,000 you've stolen from your company using my bank account. Julian approached me, and for the first time, I didn't back away. "Listen to me, you stupid old woman," he hissed. "You have no idea what you're saying. That money is mine by right. You owe me for everything I've invested in you. With my own money," I replied. "My pension, my savings." He grabbed my arm, but this time I didn't stay quiet. "Let go of me," I screamed. He was so surprised by my reaction that he actually let go. "You're crazy," he said, but his voice was uncertain. "No one will believe you." "Mr. Hines believed me," I told him. "The documents speak for themselves." His expression hardened. "If you open your mouth, if you file any kind of complaint, I swear I'll destroy you. This house is also in my name. I can kick you out on the street tomorrow. And without my help, you'll die alone like a dog." But for the first time, his threats didn't terrify me. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Julian." He raised his hand to hit me. But just at that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Petrov. "Agnes," she was yelling. "Agnes, is everything all right?" I heard screaming. Julian slowly lowered his hand. Over her shoulder, I saw there was another woman with her. It was Beatrice, my sister. "Hello," Beatrice said, pretending she didn't know me. "I'm new to the neighborhood and was just visiting Mrs. Petrov. I hope we're not bothering you." Julian appeared behind me, his fake smile perfectly in place. "No problem at all, ladies. My mother was just a little worked up because she burned the dinner." Mrs. Petrov looked at him with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Right. Well, Agnes, here's some stew. And remember, if you need anything at all, I'm right next door." Beatrice looked me straight in the eyes. "Yes, Mrs. Albright, anything you need, day or night." When they left, Julian slammed the door. "Damn nosy old women, but this isn't over. Tomorrow, we're going to the bank, and you're going to sign all the papers I tell you to. You're going to retract the complaint, and you're going to say it was all a big misunderstanding." "No," I said simply. "What did you mean, no? I'm not going to sign anything. I'm not going to be an accomplice in your thefts anymore." He looked at me with a rage I had never seen before. "Fine," he said, with a calm that scared me more than his shouting. "If that's how you want to play, we'll play. But I'm warning you, when I'm done with you, you're going to wish you were never born." I didn't sleep at all that night. At 3:00 the morning, I heard a strange noise in the yard. I peeked out the window and saw Mrs. Petrov setting something up near my window. A small security camera. The next day dawned gray and rainy. Julian got up at 5 a.m. When I went down, he was dressed in his best suit. "Good morning, Mom," he said, his voice strangely sweet. "I hope you slept well. I've been thinking, maybe I've been too hard on you. It was a trap." "That's why," he continued, "we're going to go to the bank together today. We're going to clear up this whole misunderstanding. You're going to explain that you authorized all the transfers." "I'm not going to do that, Julian," I said. His smile faded. "Of course you are, Mom, because if you don't, some very unpleasant things are going to happen. I've been thinking about calling some doctors. Doctors who specialize in older people with mental problems. Like senile dementia. It's so sad when mothers start making up stories." "Chloe and her friends all noticed how confused you were." My blood ran cold. "So we're going to the bank at 10, he said, getting up. "You're going to put on your best dress, get all fixed up, and you're going to smile while you sign. Understand?" I didn't answer. "I'm talking to you," he shouted. "Understood?" "Understood," I mumbled. He left. "I'll be back at 9:30. As soon as the door closed, I collapsed. A soft knock came at the back door. It was Mrs. Petrov. "Agnes, open up fast. I heard everything. I recorded your whole conversation, the threats, the blackmail. We have evidence." My heart started to beat faster. "I have a friend who works at the DA's office," she continued. "Ada Reyes. She specializes in this. But I need you to come with me, right now." "I can't," I said. "He'll be back." "Agnes," she said, taking my hands. "If you go to that bank, you will be his accomplice. If you don't go, he'll have you declared insane. This is your only chance." I made a decision. I went to my room, grabbed my purse, and left that house with Mrs. Petrov. For the first time, I was taking control of my own life. The district attorney's office was chaotic, but Ada Reyes, A sharp woman in her 40s saw us immediately. "Mrs. Albright," she said, after reviewing the recordings, "what your son is doing constitutes multiple crimes: domestic abuse, financial fraud, blackmail, and attempted obstruction of justice. We can arrest him today. But I need you to file a formal complaint." I looked at the clock. It was 9:15. "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "I'm ready." At 10:30, Ada Reyes's phone rang. The police had arrested Julian at my house. He was found screaming, breaking things, and looking for me. "He's in custody," she said. "The charges are serious. Bail will be denied." I felt a 000-pound weight lift. When we got back to my house, it looked like a battlefield. Julian had destroyed practically everything. "This will serve as additional evidence," Reyes said, taking photos. While we were cleaning, my phone rang. It was Julian from jail. "Mom," his voice was breaking. "Mom, please come get me out of here. It was all a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt you. You know I love you. Please, Mom, don't let me rot in this jail. I'm your son." "It's part of the manipulation," Reyes explained. "Violence, then victimhood. It's a typical pattern. Mrs. Petrov insisted I stay at her house." That night, I went to bed without fear. The next day was the bail hearing. Julian was in an orange jumpsuit. When he saw me, his expression was pure rage. Chloe was there too, looking haggard. When our eyes met, I saw shame. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I told them about the beatings, the financial control, the threats, the stolen $150,000. "And what did your son tell you this morning?" the judge asked. "He threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent if I didn't lie for him. He told me he would kick me out on the street." The judge listened to the recordings. "Mr. Julian Albright," the judge said, "the evidence shows a clear pattern of domestic abuse, financial fraud, and witness intimidation. Bail is denied. You will remain in custody." Julian exploded. "This is an injustice. That crazy old woman is making everything up. You're going to regret this, Mom. When I get out of here, I'm going to make you pay." His threats echoed throughout the courtroom, confirming everything. After, Chloe approached me. "Mrs. Albright, I need to apologize. I knew something was wrong. I saw your bruises, but I was scared. He threatened me too. When they arrested him, I found documents. He wasn't just stealing from his company, he had been stealing from my personal account too. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to testify against him." When we left the courthouse, I felt hope. Ada Reyes gave me more good news. The company where Julian worked wants to reach an agreement. They're willing to not press charges against you. As recognition that you were a victim, they're going to pay you a compensation of $50,000. "And my house?" I asked. "We checked. Your son lied. The deed is still 100% in your name." I thought I was free. I was wrong. The real war was just beginning. A week later, a letter arrived from Julian, smuggled out of jail. "Dear Mom, I hope you're enjoying your little victory, but this isn't over. I know things about you. Secrets you kept for 40 years. Remember the Blackwood Trust case, the one from 20 years ago? I found the documents you hid, the ones you altered to help Mr. Grant win that multi-million-dollar case. Documents that, if they come to light, could send you to prison for obstruction of justice." My hands trembled. I remembered Mr. Grant had asked me to reorganize some documents, to remove memos that could hurt his client. I had just followed orders. I never knew the legal implications. "I have copies of everything, Mom. If you don't drop the charges, those documents are going to the DA. Imagine the headlines. 6 8-year-old archivist arrested for complicity in cover-up." When Ada Reyes read the letter, her expression was grim. "Legally, ignorance is no excuse. If you altered evidence, you technically committed a crime. Just when I thought I had escaped, he found another way to control me." A week later, the second letter arrived. "I see you haven't learned. That's fine. Now everyone will find out." Attached are photos and recordings. Recordings? Did you think I didn't know you had cameras? I have recordings too, Mom. Recordings of you accepting cash from clients. Money you never reported. Tax evasion. Another 15 years in prison. I told Ada Reyes about the cash Christmas bonuses Mr. Grant gave me, and the tips from clients, money I never declared. We're looking at a significant tax debt, she calculated. But the tax evasion charge is worse. He's built a perfect trap. There's a third option, Ada Reyes said, her eyes glinting. An option neither of you will expect. We get ahead of him. We voluntarily confess all your mistakes before he can use them as blackmail. And we use that confession to show that your son is a master manipulator who exerts control even from jail. It was a terrifying gamble. It meant public humiliation, but it also meant taking away Julian's main weapon. Let's do it, I said. I'm tired of living in fear. The day of the press conference, I was terrified, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of him. Ada Reyes called me. Agnes, something extraordinary just happened. Mr. Davenport, Julian's CEO, wants to talk to you. Now. We met in Miller's office. Mr. Davenport, a man in his 60 seconds, looked at me with respect. Mrs. Albright, first, I want to apologize. If I had supervised Julian better, we might have prevented this. Your son's thefts didn't start 6 months ago. They started 3 years ago. We've discovered he has stolen over $500,000. But worse, he has been selling confidential company information to our competitors. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because we want to offer you a job, Mrs. Albright. Our internal records are a disaster. We discovered your work history. 40 years. Impeccable references. We need someone with your experience to help us rebuild everything your son destroyed. The salary would be $120,000 a year, plus a $100,000 signing bonus as compensation for the damage he caused you. I couldn't believe it. But there's one condition, he added. We need you to testify at your son's trial. Your testimony is crucial. Of course, I said, without hesitation. At 2 p.m., I sat in front of the cameras. My sister Beatrice, who I had called, was sitting in the front row. My name is Agnes Albright, I began, my voice shaking but strong. I am 68 years old, and for the last 3 years, I have been a victim of domestic violence by my son, Julian Albright. I told them everything, the beatings, the financial control, the theft. And then I took the leap. During my 40 years at the university archive, I made mistakes. Mistakes I didn't know were illegal, but that I now recognize as such. I explained the Blackwood Trust case, the altered documents, the unreported money. I held nothing back. My son discovered these mistakes, and he has been using them to blackmail me from jail. He threatened to publicly expose me if I didn't drop the charges. Today, I am here to take that weapon away from him. I would rather face the consequences of my mistakes than continue to be a victim of his manipulation. The room was silent. I want to send a message to all the women living in fear. Emotional blackmail, financial control, threats of exposure, they are all forms of abuse. Do not let the fear of public judgment keep you a prisoner. Your freedom is worth more than your reputation. After Ada Reyes informed me the DA's office was dropping any potential charges against me from 20 years ago. Your voluntary confession, combined with the fact that you were a victim of extreme blackmail, makes you our star witness, not a defendant, she said. That night, I returned to sleep in my own house. Mrs. Petrov stayed with me. My phone rang. It was from the jail. This time, I wasn't afraid to answer. Mom, it was Julian's voice. Defeated. I saw your press conference. And what do you think of it? I asked. You destroyed everything, he said. No, Julian, I replied, my voice calm. You destroyed that chance when you decided to turn your mother into your victim. There was a long silence. Are you ever going to forgive me? He finally asked. Someday, I said honestly. When you pay for what you did, when you seek real help, when you understand the damage you caused, someday I might be able to forgive you. But I'm never going to forget. I hung up the phone and turned it off. Tomorrow, I would start my new job. my new life. I was 68 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was completely, truly, and finally free. The truth, I realized, is the only key. It doesn't just set you free, it incinerates the prison around you.